And welcome to Meet Your Inspiration podcast with Mary and Rich. Here we're talking about inspiration, motivation, and empowerment. Our guests are real people with ordinary background who became extraordinary. With sharing their stories, we want to help you and empower you to become the person you want to be and to go beyond your dreams. We want to say again a big thank you to Hampstead House in Sittingbourne, who are our lovely host one more time again. And we definitely recommend you, if you're in the area, please come and enjoy this lovely place. The food, the service, and all this home feeling is absolutely great.
So this morning we'd like to introduce our special guest, Chris. Chris is going to share with us a little bit about his life and the effects of gambling. And so we need to go through some of the really serious situations and how gambling affects us in our lives. We're all at risk and we're all vulnerable. And it's amazing the different things that happen to us in our life that we don't even realise that it's actually affecting us. So we'd like to welcome Chris. Thank you for coming this morning.
Hello.
And we look forward to sharing Chris's story.
Thank you.
We can easily say for us that we met Chris on a network event that we've been invited. And he was the first person that we met and we were talking to. And the story that he shared with us was very interesting and definitely makes us think about the importance of this topic. So we are really pleased that you are here and we together will be able to raise this awareness more.
So Chris, before we start on the gambling effect, how did life start for you? So you left school and what did you go on to do? What was your...
Left school, went on to university. Went to University of Essex, did a degree in government and politics. Had a great time there, made some lifelong friends. I had originally thought about going into law. One of my brothers runs a successful conveyancing solicitor's practice in Wapping in East London. And he'd always, if we talk about inspirations in people's lives, and this sounds a bit schmaltzy, but all my brothers were inspirations. He was a particular inspiration in terms of business because he was very, and continues to be very successful in his career. So I kind of looked at his background in terms of the legal profession and his success in business, and I saw that as a potential opportunity. I went on to law school after university, and then kind of life got in the way. Unfortunately, I failed my legal exams. I think after 3 years of studying university, I had other distractions, a girlfriend, other things going on. I felt like I needed a break. A lot of my friends took time out before they got into work. So I then went on worked with my brother for a little bit in his solicitor's practice, kind of thinking as a graduate what I should be doing, and then looked around and actually getting a job myself and got into media sales. So started at Muse International in Wapping, working in media sales. So I actually went for a job on the Times and Sunday Times. They were looking for graduates, and they'd allotted all their places, and then jobs came up on the Sun and News of the World. That was the biggest daily.
So was that selling advertising space?
Yeah, selling advertising space. Classified, started off in classified there, moved on to field sales there. I was there for about 18 months. And then 99, there was the explosion of the internet and digital advertising. And I thought that sounded like something I should try and get into in terms of media. I certainly saw that was where it was going. And I got a job with FreeServe, which was spun out of Dixon's. So that was, at the time, free ISP. That was something brand new. It was you still had to pay for your dial-up then, and so it was free access, and it was the old dial-up as well. And it was
really slow.
Absolutely, but it was also the advent of digital online advertising. We were kind of, in some ways, making things up as we went along. So it was a brave new world. That was 99. I mean, I remember leaving News International and my boss telling me, you're making a huge mistake. And obviously,
Never catch on the internet.
yeah, it'll never catch on, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, that was kind of the beginning of, that huge industry as it is now.
Yeah.
So I worked there. I then worked for Daily Mail General Trust. So part of the MGT group was at the time Associated New Media. It was still called New Media then. So that was the Daily Mail website. So I was head of display advertising there. So we were responsible for the first advertising on the Mail Online back in the day, when it launched, early noughties. This is Money website, etc. Then decided to go off on a entrepreneurial tangent with my other brother. So I left the advertising industry around 2005 and invested in a business with my other brother, which was a landscaping and fake rock business, believe it or not.
Wow.
So we built and designed these rock fountains, which are made out of polyurethane.
For parks or for stately homes?
They were for parks, they were for stately homes, they were for architects. We had a range of stuff that was running out of garden centres. So I took on the sales and got us into about 60 garden centres within 9 months.
And I guess your sort of ability from communication, from what you'd learned with the Daily Mail and all the other sort of in the media sales. I mean, you're so used to calling people and saying, like, we've got this great offer. You know how to deal with the
absolutely.
people.
So it was sales and marketing, but there was a quick realization as well that I suddenly realized that it was a very different world to what I'd been doing. I kind of went from having enough of the corporate world very early on to realizing that actually I missed it, and also in terms of the margins that the business was making, there was also a realization that we needed to sell a huge amount of product to get those margins up. So after discussion with my brother and a very, very difficult decision, I decided actually I'd go back into digital media and advertising. And you look back now and you think, at the time I thought maybe had I made a mistake, but you kind of look back at your career and you think you have to try these things.
Did your brother's business carry on and flourish?
Yes, it did. Yeah, he carried on doing his own thing, and I then went back into digital media, working for a advertising technology business called 24/7 Real Media. They were based in the US, so I got to go out to New York, and that again. So that was another kind of experience in terms of having worked for British companies, now working for a US based business. There was a lot of technology, a lot of new innovation happening at the time. I then went from there to work for a company called Interactive Investor, and that was my first exposure to. So I ran the advertising business at Interactive Investor, digital advertising, and that was my first exposure to the stock market.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we were all aware of stocks and shares,
but
of course. Suddenly my eyes were open to some of the huge returns that people were making, particularly at the time in the alternative investment market. So AIM. If you look back at AIM, particularly then, the volatility is very, very similar to crypto. Now, just in terms of high risk, high reward.
The market at that time was quite open as well, if I remember, because there was a lot going on around mineral exploration. So there was a lot about oil and gas at that time.
Very much so.
I mean, that was a big thing, and all these little countries and sort of all discovering these small amounts of oil, and everyone going, wow, this could be the next sort of United Arab Emirates or the next Saudi Arabia, and everyone was getting really excited. And there was obviously a lot of new metals which were being discovered and minerals which could then, I guess, be used in new technologies, and everyone was looking at new technologies and what was going to succeed and what wasn't. So those are like some of the key.
Very much so. There was also there was the Falklands oil rush as well. So there was all the oil exploration operation companies around Falkland, and there was a massive interest in that, and some of the stock price movements were quite extraordinary in terms of speculation on oil finds there, etc. So, when it comes to talking about, as we will come on to later, about my gambling addiction, which was actually day trading, stock market trading, commodities, etc. That was the origins of it. Actually, working in a company in that space.
So were people tipping shares within that organisation? How was it working in the organisation for you?
So the organisation was was essentially a share dealing platform.
Okay.
For retail customers.
Okay.
But obviously there was the whole chat area where people could come on and chat about stocks and tips and talk about their trades, etc. So that kind of opened a world to me where I hadn't really kind of focused on before. And you start reading about people doing incredibly well, etc. In terms of some of the stocks that people had been buying and the returns that they had. I mean, I'd never had really been into gambling. I'd done the odd bet on the Grand National, for my mum, gone around and placed the bet at the bookies, bit of lottery, and that was about it. So I didn't see myself as a gambler at all. So working there in the advertising team, I then went on. So we'll touch on the gambling again a bit later. Just to finish off on the career, I left there to then do my own thing again, off my own back. So for 4 years, I was running a variety of businesses, recruitment consultancy for media agencies. So I'd worked with media agencies for a number of years by then. I got to know quite a few senior people within that industry. So I was doing recruitment. I also teamed up with some ex-employees from companies that I'd worked with before. And we were working with startup technology providers in terms of doing sales for them in the advertising space, doing your own thing and trying to...
So it's very much
entrepreneurial,
but very much entrepreneurial, but using a group and building teams together to try and build success on shared knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all know people that we've worked with in the past who we respect, and I tried things with them because I knew they were very good at what they did, and they also respected me in terms of my background and experience. So did that for about 4 years or so. Again, you kind of look back and you think, I ended up going back into employment again, and you kind of think, could I have done more? Could we have tried harder? Things didn't work out, etc. Yeah. I think at the time, my wife and I were kind of thinking, there was pressure on finances. I thought it was time to go back and get a job again, and
more stable.
Yeah, because that industry was still relatively young at the time. There was still demand for people with a number of years' experience in digital advertising, online advertising as well. So
as there is today, I mean, it still goes on today, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
It's a huge market.
Absolutely. Although now there are many more people doing it. Back then, even 10 years ago, it was still relatively niche. So after that, I joined Auto Trader. I'm very lucky to have joined that company. I worked there for around 5 years. Incredible business. They were looking to grow their advertising base with manufacturers, so new car advertising, to really push that out.
Were they still a magazine at that point, or were they online? Because today, I mean, they've got they're a huge online presence, and to be fair, like most people now, if they're looking at a car, it's almost the first place they look is there, isn't it? Auto Trader.
So at the time, this is 2013, so the magazine had just finished publication. The business had always been a very early adopter of digital media. So the website had been going for a number of years already, but the business was looking at focusing its new car portfolio and very much on new car advertising. So came in there with a great team, a fantastic leadership team as well, and we managed to turn around revenues there. And by the time I left, we'd nearly quadrupled the revenues for that part of the business, which was just tremendous, with a lot of some new manufacturer advertisers that had never advertised before. But if you think about it, it is the number one platform for automotive, for buying a car. And people who are looking at used cars can also be interested in new cars in terms on finance, etc., and vice versa. So it's the perfect platform for that.
And I think a lot of the traders even use it as to sort of see where the prices of. They'll look locally what cars are in their area, and they look to see what their value is.
Absolutely.
And then they can work out their margins and
Absolutely.
what prices. It's a big gauge.
And that Auto Trader also has separate platforms for motor traders as well. So it provides them with real-time data in terms of forecourt information, which they can use to their advantage in terms of shifting stock or metal, as they call it. So that role was very much focused on media agencies again, and their car manufacturer clients. Fascinating to see that turnaround in the business that we achieved there in terms of revenues, and it really was kind of simple stuff in terms of how we achieved that, and that was really kind of going back to basics, getting a good sales structure in place, and good people. Always, people always make the difference in business, they do. A great culture.
Even today they've got like a YouTube channel with, I think, Rory Reid is the presenter, I think, on Auto Trader, and to be fair, he's a brilliant presenter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's one of the best probably YouTube channels for new cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way he presents it, it's like,
it's a tremendous business on manufacturers and distributing leads for them, which was interesting because it was all about that industry was all about ultimately getting new car leads, so new customers, new clients for manufacturers.
Was that around business, more business focused?
More individuals.
Actually. Okay.
So it was a lead generation company, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
And then finally, in terms of the media career, I had an opportunity come up with a company called Spock. It was an online marketplace. They're still going now. At the time, they launched, and with a lot of advertising budget behind them and marketing budget behind them, and they suddenly became the number one marketplace on mobile for used items, similar to eBay.
Okay.
But they were very much mobile focused, and they pioneered the idea of taking, for younger generations to take photographs of used items and just push them up onto the
using
mobile
their
site.
phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So it was very much image based business, which kind of pushed the marketplace idea into younger generation, younger market, younger customer base. So that business was fascinating to work for. They were based in Vienna in Austria. So I got the chance to work out in Vienna as well. So I was based in London and Vienna, which was fantastic to get to know people out there and also get to know the culture. I really enjoyed the
Did you
culture.
live out there at all for a little bit, or did you travel back and forwards?
I travelled backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
There's fantastic restaurants out there which I got to know, and Viennese cuisine is something else, and the cafe culture, etc. Just a great way of life out there. So
I always think about patisserie, like the patisseries and places like that in Vienna.
Yeah, absolutely. Even things like sandwich shops, just the standard and quality of
it's much different than here.
Yeah, the standard of a French sandwich is just outstanding, and the patisserie, obviously the cakes and patisserie, and the coffee is so good, and the quality of life out there is superb. So enjoyed that. I headed up the display advertising team there. There was a guy that went there from Auto Trader, and he asked if I wanted to come and join them. There was a real opportunity to kind of grow that business in the UK. So I was responsible for the UK, Germany, and Austria. And then unfortunately 2020 hit, and COVID hit, and nobody knew what was going on, and advertising revenues collapsed.
And travel, obviously, the travel situation.
Absolutely,
As well.
and the parent company was hemorrhaging money, and they decided to let people go. So unfortunately, I got made redundant as a result of COVID at the time, because the ad market had collapsed, and they needed to make savings. So a lot of the business was lost, and they decided to reduce the team, come in at a new in a new role essentially, and they decided that they didn't need that role anymore. And it was understandable at the time, because a lot of businesses didn't know what was happening. Obviously, it was
no one knew what was going to happen.
Very difficult. Yeah. But at the time, if we go back to what you were talking about in terms of, I was doing incredibly well again.
So
in 2020.
Did you start, obviously, when you were an interactive investor? So at that point, obviously, that gave you the introduction into share trading.
Yeah, I didn't really trade when I worked there. It was kind of afterwards, when I'd left the business and I was doing my own thing. I suddenly thought there was an opportunity there.
So were you in a situation, I mean, a lot of people probably were saving like monthly and putting it into an ISA or something. Then suddenly someone comes along and says, oh, you can have a stocks and shares ISA. You think, oh, okay, well, I'll move some of that money, put it in a stocks and shares ISA. And then a lot of people would start off not necessarily with shares, they would start off with like funds, because obviously, like we all know, within our pension funds, if you've got a pension, normally people, the pension is split up into maybe 5, 6, 7 different categories at various different risks, depending on whether you're young, medium age, or older age. Obviously, so they move that. So it means that the funds should grow. They're sort of like not necessarily fast growing. So they're sort of maybe growing at maybe 5, 6, 7% per year, nice steady growth.
Yeah.
So as you're putting money into your investing, it's being invested in the market, and we all benefit from all the large companies in the UK and around the world who grow, like energy companies and oil companies. Obviously, within that structure, you get to that point where there are other areas below that where things are far more high risk.
Yeah, and high reward, which is the attraction, basically. So I'd seen people double, triple, quadruple their money on the AIM market
in days.
Yeah, and sometimes in days, sometimes in hours, and subject to news, obviously. Relevant to that share. So, I mean, initially, I was trading for 12 years, probably from 2010 to 2022, when kind of the shit hit the fan, unfortunately.
Really,
and I went through these cycles. I went through about 3 cycles of essentially making significant funds. I mean, tens of thousands, sometimes over 6 figures, and partly funding that with credit cards. That was where the addiction took me to. Losing it all, having all the debt, and then making it back, losing it all, having the debt,
if you lose once, then after that you make back and you've got good figure. Isn't it like, perfect, I did it, I get that?
I know.
Or is something that different is happening and you just want more and more and you want to try to get more? Because if you, as you said, if you've hit a 6-digit figure, isn't it by like, perfect, I did it, and you just take it and you leave it, or you just, this is the difficult part that you can't leave.
That's one of the gambler's fallacies, and that's that addiction, right? So having studied addiction, and also now obviously with the business that I run now in terms of raising awareness and prevention within businesses about gambling and employee gambling. Addiction, and particularly gambling addiction, one of those triggers for people is a significant win, a significant win early on, where you think, right, this is easy. I can do this again. I've done it once before. I can do it again. So if I've made those profits or that money, do it again, and
Is
I'll
it
keep doing
true?
it.
Something, obviously, I don't have experience with that, but back in the time, a few years ago, I knew a person around me, let's say. Is it true that if you start, doesn't matter if it's something with stocks or whatever, usually in the beginning you always win? And this is the addictive point where you start and you think, I always, it's not true.
Depends.
That
It
you
depends.
always
I
get
think.
like,
I think a lot of people. I don't know whether you started this way, Chris, but when I started looking at it, I first looked at companies I liked. So when I first started investing in the stock market, I always like, rather than sort of going with all the stuff that all these mining companies, I chose, like, for example, I think my first investment was with Ted Baker. So Ted Baker sort of, it went on the stock market. It done quite well in terms of retailing. It launched on the stock market, and I thought, I like the clothes.
Yeah,
Thinking that's a business I quite like. I can relate to it. So I thought I'll start putting some money in. And I remember, I think the first time I invested a single stock, so I put £100 into Ted Baker, and at the end of the day, my £100 was worth £106, and I was thinking, wow, that was cool. So I had a 6% growth in a day,
yeah,
and that point, to be fair, that £100, if it had been in an ISA, would have probably had maybe £4 in the year, because it was
yeah.
probably 4% interest rate or something. So it was like, wow, this is good. And if that's one day, what's it going to do? So I thought, well, I'll put a bit more in. I put a bit more in. Then I thought, then I started looking in the paper, and I was like looking at different companies. I was thinking, I like that company. I like that company. I feel comfortable about it. And then you sort of start to build up. So it was a gentle build up for me to
Yeah.
start off with. And then I started thinking, oh, well, actually, you can learn, and there's so many places to sort of do research. So you start researching by reading about companies on their company websites and think, oh, that's interesting. But then I suddenly discovered there are these various different platforms where people are writing, like tips and giving information, and then you discover, like, for nearly every single share, there is a platform, and there's loads of discussion every day about all these different shares. And then you get sucked in, because you get this like sort of like momentum of people giving all this information, the background research they've done, and all of a sudden you start to believe in that company, and somebody will say, oh, well, this is going to go, this is going to, I'm going to talk about multiplications of it going up. So it might be a 5x, a 10x. That means it's 5 times growth, 10 times growth, 100 times growth. And all of a sudden you think, wow, if that happens, and if I put 5 grand into that, it's going to go boom,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
away you go. And you just follow that.
yeah, but once you lose, you put 5 grand, you lose, you are in debt, you can't pay your credit card. After that, with some help, let's say, you get out of the situation. How again you would like to go and continue it? What
It's
is
that it's that
happening
it's
in the
that it's
mind?
that mentality of chasing losses as well. So
Yeah.
it's about chasing the money that you think that you can make it back. There's some interesting analysis around addiction. So there's a professor at Imperial College who did an MRI scan of a gambler's brain, and they did this experiment where they showed a gambler a casino table, and they offered him chances to bet on it, etc. And what was fascinating about how the brain chemistry reacted was that his brain chemistry as a gambling addict reacted in the same way, in actually just by participating,
Being
and let alone winning. So the brain, it's not just about winning. So people are addicted to the
take
participation,
part of
right?
it, and yeah.
Whether they win or lose, that really sums up the
It's like an
addiction there.
excitement. It's an excitement of the journey.
Yeah, you're getting your dopamine rush just by participating.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if you win or lose.
yeah.
You're getting your rush just by participating, which is the fascinating thing.
Where is this red line, let's say? Because lots of people, I play lottery from time to time.
Yeah.
Or where is the red line that from person who is not gambler you become? Is there what makes you to cross the line? Because lots of people probably they play here and there, or some invest in stocks and shares, but it's not like gambling way. Where is the line between you are addicted and not?
I mean, that's an interesting question, but also a difficult answer. I think everyone has their own journey within that, and everybody's addiction can happen in
If you all
ways.
are obviously open and we are all possible to become addicted at some point.
I think, yeah, I think people, addiction isn't necessarily a dirty word to some people. You can become addicted to different things. You can become addicted to food or
Yeah.
coffee or even fitness, weight training, etc. But I think there are a variety of different triggers for people and reasons why people gamble. So it can be anything. Everybody's journey within that I've discovered within gambling addiction can be different. It can come from separation or divorce or bereavement. It can come from a change in circumstances like losing your job or you're under financial pressure, cost of living crisis. People have actually turned. Some people in desperation have turned to gambling to try and make
This is
ends
as
meet.
well something that I
You know,
don't personally understand
mm.
because for me, I would expect that gambling will go more for people who got lots of money. And sometimes they're in life, they don't know what to do with their money or they've got everything they want. And usually for me, this is, in my understanding, for them is a bit more easier to get in things like that. And for me, it's difficult to understand people who really struggle financially, how they let into this path and they go and but probably this is the desperation point that they think in this way they can earn quickly some money. I don't know what is the mindset. It's
It
might
can also
be.
be escape as well. So women are gambling more than ever now.
As you mentioned that, I was can't
Yeah,
believe.
they're gambling nearly as much as men now. I mean, if you think back to the gambling environment 20, 30 years ago, you had to go to a bookmaker's on the high
Yes.
street or a casino, and now it's in your pocket. In your pocket you can download over 2,000 gambling apps
Wow.
onto your
Wow.
phone,
And
and
just
and and
easily like all the other apps,
yeah,
in few clicks you
bingo,
can.
casino, sports betting, and then on top of that, there's all the crypto stuff. People are becoming addicted to crypto, and then like me, the trading apps, etc.
So do you want to share with us a little bit your story, what's happened and how you realize
Yeah,
we hit that
Mm.
moment that you
yeah,
realize, oops, I am
yeah. So
really doing bad and I am addicted and I
yeah, so
need to get out.
like Richard said, I got into reading the share dealing forums, etc., on some of the broking websites, and got into the idea that I could make a second income from this. I think it was also partly for me. It was also an escape as well from the day to day. The first few stocks I got involved with were very simple banking stocks. This was 2010. It was just after the banking crisis. A lot of the bank stocks were suppressed
Mm.
at the time, so I thought there'd be potential opportunity to see them grow and make money from that. But then that suddenly became a bit boring because you suddenly saw there were stocks and shares, particularly on the AIM market, that were doing incredibly well. That
Mm.
could double, triple, quadruple in a few days with the
Can I
right
ask what
information.
is a market? 'Cause sorry, I don't have any clue
Yeah,
about it. Probably some people
So,
doesn't
so,
know
the,
what
so,
is.
so the London stock market is broken up into the main market is what they call the FTSE. So there's the FTSE 100. So they're the 100 most wealthiest companies. Then there's the FTSE 350. Then there's the whole FTSE, and that they're like so basically all the companies that are listed on the UK stock market are under that particular area. And then you've got the alternative investment market, the AIM market, which is smaller companies that list.
A bit more like startups
They're
or.
like startups. They tend to be. They go on the market generally to raise money.
Yeah.
So they
You invest to help them
yeah.
to grow
So
somehow.
they'll list and they'll basically they'll look for a valuation, and then basically they'll go out to the big investment companies. The big investment companies will then sort of put an amount of money in. There'll be a number of shares allocated, and then individuals can also buy into those individual shares.
Okay.
And then from that, that company starts as a basic platform. And let's say it's a mining company. Let's say they want to raise £100 million. So they raise £100 million from the AIM investors.
Okay.
And then from that money, then they can start to build a
And I
business.
assume here it's a bit more, you think that once they become successful and they grow, your small investment should
Should
be
grow
with quite
very
good
quickly.
results.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I particularly got interested in oil and gas exploration companies because, in terms of the profit I made within a day, it was around £80,000 because I was in the right place at the right time. I was also using. I kind of moved on from the returns could be massive, but also the losses could be
Massive.
ridiculous.
You can end up with a very big bill at the end of it.
Absolutely. So in some instances, I was doing £1,000, £2,000, £5,000 a point, and if the stock moved a point, up, I would make £1,000, £2,000, £5,000. If it moved back, then
You start losing them.
then it would drop in the same way. So
I mean, the thing is as well in that particular area, that obviously there's there are opportunities for maybe news items. I mean, I think there's a good example. You might know about this one, but so there was one morning, and I remember this, and it came up on the news, and there was like on the BBC News, it was like this company called UK Oil and Gas.
yeah,
In UK Oil and Gas, they basically discovered
yeah, I
this
remember
oil
that
well,
one.
like somewhere near Gatwick. There was like an area of forest, and they basically put
Yeah.
an oil well, and they said there could be, I don't know, thousands and thousands of gallons of oil under there. All they need to do is drill down, hit it, and the UK would have its own oil and gas supply forever. So, the stock market opened at 8 o'clock, and I remember putting, I don't know, maybe £1,000 on it, and I got in the car. So I put it at 8 o'clock. I got in the car, got to my first appointment to see my client, and I looked, and £1,000 was £10,000. I think it had gone up like 10 times,
Yeah,
or
I remember
between
that.
5 and 10 times.
On that point, if this happened, can you just take your money or no?
That's what I did that morning.
But
I
can
did.
you usually? What is the
Sometimes, not always.
Or
It's
it
not always
depends
easy.
on what you are doing. It's
Yeah, it's not always easy.
and
Depends on what
after
you're doing.
that, did I assume because I haven't heard about this area here
No,
to
yeah,
Gotham, so I assume everything goes down.
I mean, to your point, can you take the money out? Absolutely, and there are different strategies that you should use. I.e., you should de-risk, take your original investment out, let the profits ride on. Take half out, keep half in. Different ways
Yeah.
of trying to protect your original cash, as it were. The trouble is when you're addicted to this stuff and you're
Obviously, you
constantly,
forget the point
well,
to
you
take
kind
your
of think,
money.
if I keep it in longer, if I add even more in, potentially the potential returns could be even bigger. I mean, there's greed. It's that risk reward thing. Greed is part of that as well. So, I'd make significant profits, but then I'd either take them out and think I'd done a great job because I took profit, but then I'd go and stick it in somewhere else, which didn't always necessarily
Will be as well.
work out. I could end up losing money, and so I got into that, and then it came to the point where I started using credit cards to fund the accounts. So,
But during this time, you are making money. You are obviously hitting good after that losing. It comes the moment you start to use the credit cards because you wanted bigger amounts to invest.
because I wanted a bigger pot of money to invest. Because I thought if I put the money in, I'm going to get greater rewards because I've already proven to myself that I can do this.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where I was using credit cards to fund the accounts, and believe it or not, the broking accounts like IG or Spreadex allow you to fund the accounts with credit. And I mean, they stopped that with the gambling apps, the sports betting, the likes of William Hill, Ladbrokes. There was legislation to stop that, I think, in 20, 2019, I think, or 2018, I think it was. But the
At
spread
least to
betting
have some
apps.
limit, because obviously people don't have limits.
The thing with gambling or gambling addiction, it's very easy for people to say, "Well, you're stupid. You shouldn't have done that. Why didn't you just stop?"
Because it's not easy.
Unfortunately, and this has been proven time and again, that it's not that simple. So to cut a long story short, through that 10-year period or 12-year period that I was trading, I went through these cycles of making significant losses, making the money back, getting into debt, paying it off, and all this was going on whilst I was, working. I mean, there were times where I didn't trade, or I drew a line under it, but I kind of always got myself, because of the addiction.
Did you understand back on the time that you are addicted, or you didn't get it
No,
that way?
to me it was a mental challenge. It was a mental challenge that I was going to prove that I could make significant money off the back of it, off the back of what I was doing. And it wasn't only researching stocks and shares. I got into technical analysis as well. So in terms of actually being able to chart out, so charting. I took a course in professional charting of stocks and shares. So
This is a wave, isn't it?
Yeah. So being able to chart stocks. There's an art to being able to predict through charting the movements of stocks and shares, either up or down. And again, when I first started doing that, that brought some discipline and to what I was doing, and I had some success with that. But then the addiction started creeping in, and you started not sticking to what you'd learned, or sticking to the discipline that you'd put in place. It was very.
Anyone around you on that point? Did they notice, or are you sharing any information about that, or people around you, they haven't been aware what's going on?
I was. So the first time things came to a head was in 2013, 2014. I had got into debt, and I'd actually reached out to my brother and said, "Look, I need help." He said, "What are you doing? This is crazy." I told him, and he lent me some money to pay off some of my debts. I hadn't told my wife about any of what was going on.
But as well, she wasn't aware how much you are involved. I assume you don't go share. Today I invest.
I've been hiding all that from her, and I look back now, and it was years of actually hiding that, and the stress and pressure from that. I had a pressurized jobs in sales as well, hitting multi-million-pound targets. Then in the background, you've got all this other stuff going on with debt and trading and trying to make money. And you look back and you think, I was holding that all together. It must have been impacting me.
Of course. This
in my
is why I'm
personal life,
asking
in my
you, because
professional.
sure, lots of people, they will ask themselves the question, or you'll think like, oh, how I didn't notice that my house is doing this. But obviously you were covering it quite good.
To an extent, it came to a point when the shit hit the fan the first time, we had to remortgage the house, and I had to tell my wife what I'd done. And she actually thought I'd been having an affair because of why I'd been hiding things.
Yeah.
So we remortgaged the house in 2015 to pay off the debts that I had accrued, and obviously I felt absolutely terrible about that. And
did you stop investing at that point?
I did, and then I had a conversation with my wife, and I said, "Look, I think I can make the money back. Trust me, and believe me, I can do this." And to her credit, don't do anything stupid, but within reason, obviously. And then I did actually go and make the money back, believe it or not, which allowed us to move house, and things were in a great place. And I'd stopped completely by then. I'd stopped for nearly 6 months, and then the nagging thoughts started coming back that
You can do better.
I
You
can
can do
do it.
more.
I'd been keeping track of certain stocks, and if only I'd been in that, I could have made that money. And
Because once
I
you know
can't.
how to do the research,
Yeah,
you understand it. And so when you had two skill sets there. So you had the technical analysis, so
yeah,
you knew how to understand the waves
yeah,
where it goes up and down, because most of the stocks going up and down this way, or they're going up and down. So normally you can make money on the way up, and you can also make money on the way down, because like there will always be points so you start to believe on what's going on in that particular case, don't you? And also because you do the technical analysis, everyone can be sort of amazing heroes in a growing market, and as the market's growing, it
absolutely.
builds your confidence, because
Yeah,
you go, well, all of a sudden you've
I know.
discovered this, and you know it's going to go up. And I mean, like, a great example, obviously today everyone's driving an electric car. So what the key mineral in an electric car is lithium, and lithium became one of the minerals.
Yeah,
And then I think there was also on another front, obviously, there was a big thing about fertilizers, and there was a UK company that got a lot of um, exposure, because they basically discovered there was this mine up somewhere in the northeast, and there was this company, if I remember, called Cirrus Minerals, and it got a
I
huge
remember that.
following. So Cirrus Minerals, it got exposure in all the newspapers. So everyone was going, well, this company is going to be enormous. It's going to export this mineral. It's going to be used on fertilizers across the fields across the world, and it's going to transport and transform the thing. But what they didn't underestimate, and all the investors who invested didn't realize, the infrastructure costs of building this mine were astronomical. So the company was going to constantly have to keep coming back to the market to get more money. So everyone was looking at this huge picture that this company is going to be worth, like maybe £1 billion. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's 100 million, but that was its sort of book value based on its potential. But its potential was 1 billion. So immediately you're thinking, this company is going to 10x. So if it's going to 10x and you put in £100,000, it's going to be, in 5 years' time, it's going to be worth £1 million.
Mm.
And you can see that, and because it's in the UK, everyone goes, "Wow, this is a sure thing." Because this project's bound to succeed, and sure enough, it did all right. But there were loads of technical traders following it. Had a huge following on all the forums, and most people were investing, particularly between 2015 and 2020. They were following this company, and they were believing that this was going to be the next big thing in the UK. And because it was UK, and it wasn't like some little country in Africa where they found this little deposit, which where there might be difficulty in terms
Yeah.
of extracting, it was an easy one, and yet it went bust.
I mean, that's the thing. What you say is people believing. There are countless stocks out there that people are adamant.
Mm.
They will swear blue to you your face that this is the next big thing,
Yeah,
because people can self convince themselves that these things are going to happen.
But some of them, they were big thing, isn't it? As far as I know, Facebook, Google, all these ones start like that as well.
it did.
Someone believed in them,
Yeah,
and yeah, obviously,
And as a tech stock, probably the biggest is Tesla.
I don't know yet the story, if they, but yeah, probably was the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, Tesla
so
shares
that's
went.
why probably key people to believe
yeah.
that
So
something might be the next big thing.
I also think that there's so many ways to look at this. There is a difference between investing, so people investing for a longer term, and then to what I was doing, which was a lot of the time a lot of short. Yes, there were some longer term trades, but most of it was short term trades to
And when they're short
make a
term, are
profit and
they
get
with bigger profit, eventually bigger risk and bigger earning, or no?
potentially. It just depends. You could get into a stock, in one day and just come out with profits, or a few days or a week. So there were sometimes multiple trades
Isn't
going
this
on.
as well lots of time consuming
Yes.
to keep on track on
Yeah,
all this and to
absolutely.
keep an eye on that? So how
Yeah,
you manage,
absolutely.
because all the time you were working and you were on a full-time
Yes.
job.
Yes.
So how this was?
Yeah. It was, it was definitely a distraction,
Hmm.
and the pressure from it. When I look back now, I mean, you look back and you think it's an insanity. What were you actually doing? Why were you doing that?
Hmm.
But it was that addiction of trying to make those profits, make the money back. I mean, by I got back into it again. I told my wife that I was doing small amounts now, and it wasn't, nothing to worry about. But that wasn't true, because I started borrowing money again, and things had escalated to the point that by the end of 2019, I owed over £90,000 on credit cards, and I'd been there before and made it back a couple of times, but things had escalated out of control, and I think things were tough. Unfortunately, my father had passed away towards the end of 2019. That had he'd lived a long, incredible life, but it still had impacted me in terms of, as it would do, in terms of thinking, what was I doing? Dad would have approved of this at all. I was upset about Dad. I was upset about the amount of money that I was owing of that, and then all the debt that I'd accumulated. And I thought, I'm going to get myself out of this. And I'd done, as I mentioned, I lost my job due to COVID and redundancy. My mum passed away the day after that, and I owed £90,000, and there was so much pressure on it. But I still thought that I could turn this around, and I did. I got the market right in terms of what was happening to the market because of COVID. So I'd gone short on the market, and then when the stocks turned around, I went long again, and I cleared over £200,000 in 2020.
Just explain that, Chris. So, like, when you say the market was going short and the market was going long, just explain that, just so everyone understands what that means.
Yeah. So because of again, this sounds all brilliant and amazing now, and I wish I'd just walked away with all that money, but never mind. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. So I predicted that. So I knew, because of what was happening with the early days of the pandemic, that the markets were going to drop. So I shorted the market at the time. So there were a number of stocks I knew that would probably drop as a result of the pandemic.
So basically, you put a bet to say that stock is going to get down to a certain level.
Yeah.
So and the more points it goes down, the more money you make.
The more profit.
More profit you make because it's going down.
Absolutely. Yeah. So so I did that, and then when things started to stabilise, I realised that there were certain companies that were going to do well, like we talked about this earlier, the flow tests,
lateral flow test
companies.
And
so
PCR.
I backed them, the PCRs, a number of other businesses that were bouncing back, and I'd gone from all that pressure, the debt, losing the job, dealing with the bereavement of both my parents. All that pressure, and I turned it around by the summer. I'd cleared 200 grand. I'd paid my debts off, and I thought, I could do this for a living now.
There we go.
So even after all that, so I mean, I remember vividly. I was in Vienna at the time, at the end of 2019. I remember being in the hotel room, looking at my debts and thinking, if I ever get out of this, I'll never do this again, right? This is it for me. If I ever get out of it, I'll never do this again. And
you did it.
What did I do?
I mean, particularly that COVID time. So like from March 2020, probably till August 2020, and maybe in a shorter span than that, from March 2020 to maybe the end of May 2020, there were a lot of investors who'd seen these lateral flow tests and PCR tests, because obviously that was the solution to getting COVID under control. So these companies, if they were successful, and one or two of them really were, and one or two of them were developing something incredibly special, and if they managed to hit that point, they were going to be, they were going to get bought out by GlaxoSmithKline or whatever. So they were going to be huge.
The point is that obviously get out of this,
Yeah,
and
it was such, wasn't it?
happen again, and how actually you end up with this gambling.
I mean, and just to say as well, because of lockdowns, there were a lot of people started trading as well.
Yeah.
So for experienced people like me, it was like taking candy from a baby because the market was so buoyant. There was so much money in the market. I mean, the alternative investment market, the AIM market had been relatively quiet, practically dead for a while, and suddenly all this money was coming in to it. People were trading from home, and a lot of people actually got addicted in 2020 to it, day trading. They thought they could give up their day jobs, like even despite everything that I'd done. I actually thought, the market's buoyant. There are no jobs out there because of the pandemic. Certainly in media, there weren't any jobs at my level. I could go full time with this, and that's what I decided to do. And I spoke to my wife about it. But again, so 2020, great. Now I'm thinking, I mean, again, you kind of kick yourself and you look back after everything you've been through, all the pressure and the stress you put yourself through. I mean, I remember, over those years trading, going on holiday with the family and being constantly distracted by the debt that I was in. Sometimes because when a trade had gone against you, I remember getting an alert on my phone and telling my wife, "Oh, I'm just popping up to the hotel room, to go to the bathroom, whatever." I went up there and I was scrabbling through the suitcases for the credit cards that I had in there to make sure that I had margin on my account to cover those potential losses. I couldn't even enjoy a holiday because I was so wired about what was going on. So there was a lot of pressure and stress that I put myself under, and you look back and you think, why were you doing that? So 2020, I thought I could go full time with it. 2021, things started going wrong. I was trying to give myself realistic targets for a monthly income. My wife was working at the time as well, and that addiction and that greed came in again, and I was overextending myself. I wasn't being disciplined. Some of the greatest day traders, there are people that do it. I think they are an elite of individuals who are able to be so disciplined in terms of what they do, because you have to be able to know when to close a position and get out of it quickly and reopen one. And I tried to do that, but it was the greed, it was the addiction that kept me pushing. I mean, I wanted to prove a point that I could make this work. That money, that 100 odd grand that I'd made in profit because I paid all those debts off with the other, started disappearing. I then started borrowing on the credit cards again, and to cut a long story short, by the beginning of 2022, I had 100. I had 100 grand. I put 40 grand in my wife's name that she didn't even know about. I was spinning all these cards. I was essentially using the broking accounts as I was kind of money laundering my own credit cards. I was using one credit card to pay off the other one through the broking account. It's just insanity. I was spinning all these cards. I mean, I think I had 14 cards that I was spinning around.
Wow.
Just madness.
That's incredibly stressful as well, to be doing that as well, because it takes mentally, it just takes so much of,
I know.
And while you're doing all that, you're not actually concentrating on what's going on with all these different stocks in front of you going up and down.
So that's all going on. I think I was still, I'd suffered the loss of my parents who were both incredible people and huge influence on my life, as they should be. And all this was going on. I was thinking about getting back into work, but there weren't that many jobs out there. And also in media, unfortunately, as is the case in a number of industries, when you're in your late 40s, and you're going for jobs and you're getting interviewed by people who are 10 years younger than you, and you've got more experience than them. And I was finding that hard as well, trying to get back in. So it felt like back into full-time employment, sorry. So it felt like I had to try and make the day trading work because there was no other alternative. Obviously, there were other alternatives, but it was the addiction talking.
Yeah.
And things really hit the shit really hit the fan. March, April 22, where I suddenly realised that I'm going to go mad.
Yeah.
if I don't do something about this. I was bordering on insanity. I mean, I wasn't sleeping either. About all that pressure, all that stress.
And especially because you can't share with anyone.
I know,
Don't talk to
I didn't tell
anyone.
anybody.
This is
and this is all in my head.
big problem as well,
Exactly.
building up during the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are statistics from Gamcare, the gambling charity, that it's nearly 3/4 of people who have a problem gambling or a harmful gambling addiction don't tell anyone about it. They won't, because it's the shame and the stigma. I'd already having to reach out for support to the family. That was the other thing. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to fix this myself, which again then made you take even greater risks trying to chase the losses. So all that's going on, and it just got to a point where I just knew I had to reach out to the family, to my wife, to my brothers, and talk to them about what I had done. And there was a lot of shame and embarrassment with that.
Yeah, but I assume as well relief.
Huge
little
relief.
bit, at least.
Huge relief. I mean, and again, my wife stood by me like a rock. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I thought that this is it. She's gonna have had enough now.
Yeah.
And listen, I mean, following that, I'll talk a bit about Gams Anonymous in a minute, but probably 90% of the men in the Gams Anonymous meetings that I'd go to were divorced as a result of their gambling addiction. So
because probably you have to be quite strong personality woman to keep supporting and to know that you can help.
Absolutely.
Because the easiest way is yet to go.
Absolutely. So
it's that trust as well at that point. It's trusting.
I've broken all the trust.
Yeah,
definitely. I've hidden all this stuff from you. The extent of it as well. The debts were astronomical. I mean, even just saying that now, I want to laugh, but I mean, at the time, it was it was like the end of the world to me, really.
So what helped you then? How?
Yeah, so I spoke to my wife Helen, and then I spoke to my brother Mark, who's with the solicitors company, and he kind of bailed me out before, and he was just like, he was incredibly supportive, and my wife was as well. And he said, he said, I told you back in 2013, 2014 that this wasn't a route to success or wealth, but I was adamant I was going to prove everybody wrong. That they both insisted that I got professional help and reached out to Gams Anonymous, which is a fantastic community of people that want to support you, and then also professional help via Gamcare, the gambling charity, gambling support charity. So I mean, at the time, I'm currently making a career about talking about all this stuff, but at the time I was so embarrassed. Just the embarrassment, the shame. I was so ashamed of what I had done, so embarrassed. To talk about this stuff it made me feel sick.
Proud of it, because what you're doing now because I think obviously now taking us through your story, because last time we just had a few conversations
Yeah.
about that, but now taking us through your story, it's clearly showing that this can happen to absolutely everyone. And it's a great awareness and highlights how people just to be careful with what they're doing. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that this is where we're going now about your business, let's say, whatever you're doing, because it's really great. You've been there, and this is the best point of view to talk where it's not that you read somewhere about something and okay, let's go and raise awareness. No, you've been there, you experience it, and I would say you've been quite successful person as well in your work. I mean, you've done great.
Incredible
You've
career.
been,
Yeah.
career, changed lots of things, quite innovative businesses as well you've been through. And it's clear example that happened to everyone. And I'm sure that, you go through really big embarrassment and shame or whatever, but now you took the best of it. And what makes you to change and to obviously have the business and to start help people?
Yeah. So it was the process of recovery as well, that made me realise that I wanted to help people. I also realised that there was a gap out there in terms of companies engaging with businesses to talk about, employee gambling and the statistics around that. But just going back to my personal recovery, I'd reached out to Gamcare. They incredibly they put me in touch with a professional counselling charity that specialise in professional counselling for gambling, so harmful gamblers addiction, and they paired me with somebody there who also had been a gambling addict. And what they try and do with this charity, they try and pair you with people with similar backgrounds to yourself. And what was interesting about that, and also then going on to Gamblers Anonymous, is that you suddenly discover that there are people just like you who've also been through the same thing. So the professional counsellor, I had 10 sessions which were free from the charity, which was incredible. The professional counsellor, we got to know each other quite well over that period, and he was a former CFO, chief financial officer of a multinational fashion brand based in London. He'd been addicted to sports betting, so he was addicted to betting on football, snooker, golf, any sporting event, and he was addicted.
He was in
He
a bit position, did he?
Yeah, he ended up embezzling over £1 million from that company, a client funds, to fund his gambling addiction. And because he was a CFO, he hid it in the company accounts. He was fired and he was taken to court. Bless him. I mean, he opened up to me, but the only reason why he didn't go to prison was one of the mitigating factors was that he tried to kill himself because of where he'd ended up. Now this was a CFO of a multinational business. I think it was a PLC, and
Who was earning, I'm pretty sure,
Yeah.
quite good amount of
Yeah.
money. He
And
probably had a really good life.
I know,
but
and I'm thinking about the terrible, the losses that I'd made, and suddenly I'm thinking, well, I didn't steal money from
anywhere.
Well, I stole money from my credit cards. And this guy's chief financial officer, his addiction was so extreme that he embezzled funds from his company, and his addiction was so extreme that he wanted to take his own life as a result of it. And that made me feel, I mean, it kind of put what I'd done into context. And to be honest, the great thing about counselling from people who've been in a similar situation to yours is they know what you've been through, and you kind of help counsel each other, if you know what I mean. So that was a huge that made a huge difference to me, because suddenly I realised that I'm not the only one that's done this, and that there are people in similar situations who've done even things to an even greater degree, you know. And then going to Gamblers Anonymous, you know, there are teachers, there are doctors, there are accountants, there are, you know, the dinner ladies, there are plumbers, there are builders, there are people with their own businesses, you know, people that have lost businesses because of their gambling addiction, people that have lost houses, inheritances, you know, people also that had also been addicted to stock market trading and crypto, for example, as well, which is another huge addictive area. And again, it's suddenly you're realizing that you know, it's all walks of life. It's different backgrounds, it's different people, men and women. Unfortunately, probably women are underrepresented at Gamblers Anonymous, because I think a lot of women intimidated, because it is a heavily male environment, and you know, the figures show women and gambling, women's gambling addiction has risen fivefold in the last few years. It's a huge issue, but women are less likely to actually go and seek support. So
Are there separate organisations for women to go to in terms of
there,
women's gambling
there,
to help them as well?
there are, as well as organisations to support people who are the affected others of gambling, harmful gamblers. So there's a lot of support out there. The stuff for women is on a smaller scale, but in terms of that support, it's growing now as well, which is really important. So you're realising that there's a lot of support out there, and there's a lot of younger guys that are also being affected by this now as well. So
Because you said nowadays it's quite easy to get into it.
yeah, as I said, you know, there are 2,000 apps on your phone that you could download now and
Easily.
and start gambling. Yeah, Public Health England estimate their research from last year, 2023, states that they estimate that there are 5 million people, 1 in 12 people, who are impacted either directly or indirectly by gambling. So 1.5 million directly and 3.5 million indirectly. And those figures could be even greater, apparently. So there are figures out there from Gamcare that suggest indirectly 6 to 10 people are impacted for every problem gambler. So that's spouses, partners, children, friends and family, employees. That one individual can impact another 6 to 10 people.
On previous conversation we had, you mentioned something that really I want to mention today. It was about how nowadays in the kids' platforms and games,
Yeah,
how they've got all these things to buy, either cards, coins, or whatever.
yeah. So
And
it's
that this is clearly like an example of
Early stage gambling.
yes.
so loot boxes is what you're talking about.
Yeah, in general, I wouldn't say particular games, brands, whatever, but in general, because I've got a
Yeah,
child and I know from kids around as well that always doesn't matter what kind of game is or what kind of brand is, it's always something that it's made them addictive, like to
yes,
go and buy the coins or whatever, and the
absolutely.
amounts are a bit growing, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, but I really want that, and yes, but what's the matter if you get it now or in a month later? And once after the conversation with you, I start to reflect, because I didn't even look on that as, I wouldn't say signs of gambling, but probably it's something that built up in someone that, oh, I can do
Yeah,
today,
absolutely.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
and
So these are in-game or in-app purchases. A lot of those are known as loot boxes. So in games like Fortnite or Call of Duty, or then there's also FIFA. So FIFA packs where you can actually pay to download a team or a player, a particular player, and it's randomized content. So there's a
do you think
risk
these
reward
things,
element.
they are risk? to
The-
become or to start to
Yeah,
have
so
like an addiction.
absolutely. So some of these items you've got less than a 5% chance of actually obtaining, and kids are to paying money trying and chasing after some of these items.
Yeah, because they're gonna help them to perform better on the game
Better
or
in the game.
whatever.
So it could be a particular player in FIFA, or it's a particular camouflage, or a particular weapon in Fortnite or Call of Duty, and kids are chasing these items. I mean, there's news about this stuff, headlines around children spending their parents,
Yeah.
on their credit cards or debit cards, children, blowing all their savings on it as well.
How this can be prevented? Because you can't stop a child, let's say, to play a game.
No, I
And
mean,
is there any? My personal thought and what I'm doing is like you've got like a limit per month.
yeah,
You've got like a smaller thing. You can't say no at all because you want your child to
yeah,
be able to play with friends or whatever to do. But my personal thought is that you need to have like a monthly, let's say, limit.
yeah.
And this is not passing. Is that the way, or there is something else as well that can be?
I mean, there are restrictions that you can put onto your child's account on the actual gaming console itself. So you can put restrictions on purchases or limit age limit certain content, etc. But a lot of parents aren't aware of that either. They just won't know that you can do that. I mean, interestingly, the Gambling Commission actually looked at potentially regulating this industry. I mean, the industry around in-game purchases is worth around £1 billion a year, but they decided that regulating it would probably be too difficult to do. But what you say about the addiction, it is known. There are studies proving that it is a gateway onto more adult or more serious forms of gambling.
Later on.
So there are several studies out there in America and in Europe that prove that playing these games and actually purchasing in-game content, which is a form of gambling in terms of the fact that you'll not necessarily know what item you're going to receive. There's a risk-reward element there.
Exactly.
Is a gateway onto further future adult gambling. So it is a worry, definitely. I don't think many parents realise.
No. And after our
The risks there.
conversation, I spoke with quite a few, and their reaction was like mine. They were like, I never thought about that. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is something definitely we need to bring and to speak.
And I guess the children as well. I mean, there must be, because amongst their peers, they all know this thing and they go, oh, well, we
Yeah.
need this and we do this and if you do that. And obviously, their minds are able to absorb much more quickly than parents. And as you get older, although we might have technical knowledge and understanding, but they're almost at the forefront of that technology all the time.
Oh, they know more than us.
They always know more than
Of
us.
course.
So even though, as a parent, you might put in like a step, they'll go, oh yeah, well, no, I know, and I know what password.
Oh, exactly.
My mum always uses this
Unless
password or
some
that
parents
password.
are a bit more technology.
Yeah, of course.
But
Yeah.
not everybody
I mean,
will know.
I've heard of kids getting around that because they go into the shop and they actually buy the vouchers. So if the parents have blocked credit cards, they'll go and buy the vouchers and then put the vouchers in to be able to buy the stuff. Going back to your point about kids and peer pressure, so there's also peer pressure in at school about having the best players in FIFA.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount I've heard of children spending hundreds of pounds on these FIFA packs, addicted to try and actually attain that particular player for their team.
Tell us a bit more what you're doing, how businesses react, how you find it since you started, because it's quite new venture, I assume.
I mean, I've been going properly nearly a year now.
How you find it? Are people open? Do they understand? Have you got success getting to businesses who are open to have you around, speak with the employees and start to raise this awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of interest. I guess there's a lot of awareness now being generated by what I'm doing. People aren't necessarily aware of the impact that it can have on people, and also my story in terms of the share dealing side. It's not typical of a gambling addiction, because people don't necessarily associate that with gambling, but it was exactly the same thing. It was exactly the same addiction as a gambling addiction, and there are many people that are now being treated for that as well. So it's literally raising awareness with businesses around the actual impact and damage that it's having out there. The fact that, for example, 45% of employees are accessing gaming and gambling apps at work. You wouldn't believe that. That was a piece of research done with HR Review. They surveyed chief technical officers at a number of businesses, 1,000 businesses, and that's what came back. Public Health England say that 15% of all gamblers are gambling at work. There's a study by Reed in Employment. 28% of people that gamble at work don't want to tell their colleagues about the amount of money that they're gambling. So there's that shame and stigma going on. Anecdotally, I remember the sales teams that I managed, people would be sharing tips, gambling tips. They'd be showing each other their wins. They never show their losses,
Yeah, of course.
but they'd be showing each other their wins. They'd be showing on their apps. They'd be showing tips for talking about cryptocurrencies, also share dealing as well. I know of people who would stay in the office late to play online poker games on their laptops, and their managers thought that they were working, but they were playing online poker. So my point is that it's prolific, and it is a significant issue out there.
This is where it's finished my knowledge about that. And I know, because I love to go when I say I love to, I go for fun if I've been in my life 2 or 3 times in a casino.
Yeah.
But I play with something super stupid, just for fun. And
Just for fun.
And I would say
Exactly.
even less than £20, I would say.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to enjoy the moment. I don't go. But after the meeting with you, my mind was changed and my thoughts, and you start to think like, wow, this is not fun, and this is not just the lottery that I play once a month.
Going back to your point about fun, I'm not anti-gambling. Most people gamble responsibly. I think when it comes to working out if you are, addicted, or you have a problem with gambling, or you're experiencing gambling harm, there are some very simple questions that you can ask yourself. Are you losing track of time when you're engaged in these activities? Are you betting or trading more than you can afford to lose? Those are 2 very, very simple things. Are you? The third one would be: do you feel shame, or are you feeling guilty about your gambling or your trading? Those are 3 very simple questions that you can ask yourself.
Yeah, but they'll give you exactly the right.
But that's a very, very good point, because my journey, and most gambling addicts' journeys to recovery, it's all about self-realization and self-awareness, and actually admitting to yourself
I think,
that you have an issue or a problem. You need to deal
and there
with
is
it.
no shame.
No.
If your answers these questions bring you to think that something is wrong. So always there are lots of charities and places, as Chris mentioned, can help. I'm sure people around can be supportive. So I think this is a quite big step for people to understand and to find the problem and try to fix it. And I assume this is what you're trying to do as well, not only to fix once you are in, probably it's prevention as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Try to not get there.
Definitely. So I think half the battle is awareness, and that leads on to prevention. Because if you educate people, if you make people aware, then you can prevent them getting into similar situations as well. I can't believe every time I actually do deliver the training at a company, that somebody there, more often than not, will actually say, actually, I want to share a story. You know, I had a training session the other day where a woman mentioned that her ex-partner had lost both of their homes and his business to his gambling addiction. Now, these similar stories keep coming up all the time. It's prolific. People don't realise
No.
how prolific it is. Ultimately, you know, people lose their houses, but people have also lost their lives as well. So, in terms of suicide, unfortunately, it's got the highest percentage suicide rate of any addiction, and I think it's that shame and stigma that goes with it. There are some shocking stories out there, you know, absolutely shocking.
Where people can find you? We know obviously about LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Have you got a website?
yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, and my company website is projectwellbeing.org.uk.
Yeah, we'll share all this
We
in
will.
links as well later
Fantastic.
on, because we do believe that people need to know and to share more and to speak about that. And yeah, whoever need help, advice, I'm sure Chris will be
No,
more
thank
than
you.
happy to help. And businesses, yes, please reach. And as well as you talking about all the other addictions, we believe strongly that, and I would say even kids, teenagers,
Absolutely.
I think they need to be aware of all these little things that may lead to these troubles. We need to talk more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I'm also doing is I'm doing free workshops to schools as well. So I've been going out and talking to schools as well about the risks around loot boxes in particular, but
Yeah,
also about gambling.
great. So short time, but yeah,
Yeah,
very
so
Thanks so much, Henry.
pleasure.
yeah,
Thank you.
Chris, thank you very much. So thank you for everyone listening to us today. We hope you found it really interesting. If you do have a problem with gambling and you want to find more information, please do look at the links below. There'll be various links that you can follow that will take you to the right place. And please, if you're looking for help in the workplace, do reach out to Chris. I'm sure he'll be able to come in and help you with whatever needs you have. Thank you all for listening today. And we just ask that if you are listening on YouTube, please do give us a like and do subscribe so you get more interesting content coming up. And if you're watching or listening on Spotify, again, please do follow us. Thank you very much to you all, and we wish you a great day.